The sad irony here is that the protest was that they don't like being in this stay-home order, and they may have just created a need to lengthen it.
Operation Gridlock left Lansing streets at a standstill and filled with signs, flags, and car horns. Protesters called for Governor Whitmer to reassess her latest stay-home, stay-safe order.
I can go to a pot shop and get pot, but I can't get my teeth fixed right now.
I don't want government ever stepping in and telling us what to do in our own homes, in our own communities, outside of common sense regulations.
We want to go back to work. We have employees. We have paychecks to issue. We have bills to pay.
The governor says she supports the right to demonstrate, but in times like this, she says what the protesters are doing is not helping to slow the spread of the virus.
When people gather that way without masks, they were in close proximity, they were touching one another, that's how COVID-19 spreads.
But in the midst of the protests, Governor Whitmer and Chief Medical Executive Dr. Janae Caldoun gave an update on COVID-19 in Michigan.
We are very optimistic that the actions that we are taking right now as a state are working. However, a plateau does not mean that we are out of the woods.
And they're still asking people across the state to continue to stay home, stay safe, and take precautions.
And we've got to all do our part for the sake of one another and for the sake of our economy.
Sherry, with millions of tests happening around the country, I wanted to know just how easy or difficult it is to get the results of a COVID-19 test. So if you're up for a science lesson, here's what happened.
Is this your first time in any of the Sparrow facilities?
It all starts at a testing site. I went to Sparrow's Frandor site in Lansing, where hundreds are being tested every day.
Sit back, face forward.
Okay.
Try to relax, tilt your head up a little bit.
After it's inserted into my nose, the nasal swab is then removed, labeled, and sealed. It's then put into a refrigerator for a carrier to come pick up and take to the hospital laboratory. The carrier drops the tests off, and that's where the process begins. Waleed Khalife, a medical director at Sparrow Labs, explains the process to us. First, the workers will take the sample and extract the nucleic acid, which is DNA and RNA. If the coronavirus is present, it would be in the RNA. From there, the RNA is turned into cDNA and then gets amplified.
The virus, it will be amplified, one copy into billions.
That way, the virus can be easily detected. So if a machine tries to amplify the virus and it can't, it means there is no virus and the test would be negative. If it does amplify, it means the test is positive.
This is positive for one patient with their internal control, and then the other patient is down here. It's negative for all the targets.
So how do false positives happen? Khalife says there's a lot of ways, like if a sample gets contaminated or machines in the lab aren't operating correctly. He says there's many ways false negatives can happen too.
You went to our collection agency, they did not collect it properly.
But Khalife says don't let that discourage you from getting tested.
We really do our best to avoid false negative or positive.
What started out as a peaceful afternoon erupted into a chaotic evening in downtown Lansing. Chase Bank is just one of the many buildings facing severe damage. An earlier Sunday evening, a car was flipped and set on fire. Multiple rounds of tear gas was released into crowds of thousands of people. The Romney building's windows were destroyed, along with the Lansing Police Department's door shattered. Officers with the Lansing Police say this is the worst damage they've seen to the department. And for Chief Green, he says he's disappointed with how this day turned out.
Things started off extremely well, and then it turned into a riot. We had looters, we had people assaulting others, we had arsons, we had disorderly conduct, and a number of other offenses that many of the rioters engaged in. They were assaultive, threw bottles at our police officers. We did the best we could to mitigate as much damage as we could.
Chief Green says they're going to start rebuilding tomorrow, but there's a lot to clean up. We will continue following the aftermath of these violent protests on air and online at WLNS.com. Here for you in Lansing, Kalie Marantette, 6 News.